Hi. How are you today? Today we will learn a new topic. Before we continue, let's recap the previous topic we've discussed. Last class we've discussed about video. In the discussion we've touched about how the video work. We have talked on charge-coupled device, CCD, or complementary metal oxide semiconductor, CMOS, image sensor. I'm also have put several YouTube link for further information regarding both devices. Hope you've watched the video and gain more knowledge about how the video or the sensor work. Next, we've discussed about the analog and digital video standards. Furthermore, I've talked about the reason why the analog video need to be converted to the digital video. Of course, the main reason is a delivery method. There are several standards about the digital video, which are NTSC, PAL, and SECOM standard. Later on, we've discussed on the display standard, which are CRT, stand for cathode ray tube, LCD, means, liquid crystal display, LED, stand for light emitting diode, and plasma technology. We also have discussed on the video containers or video formats, which are, OGG, MP1 MP2, MP4, MP7, MOV, WMV, WEBM, FLV, and RM. Before we end our discussion about video, you have been told about the video editing and codec. I hope everybody's still fresh about the video topic. For further information, you need to watch again the video if you can't remember on what you've learned. Now, let's take a look on our today topic overview. For a start, you will be introduced to the animation. Of course, we will start the discussion from the basic animation. Then, we will talk on the computer generation animation. How we can create our own animation for multimedia project. Next, we will learn about the animation file format. Final subtopic, we will discuss on how we be able to create a successful animation. Next, is our today learning objective. At the of today lecture, you must be able to achieve all objectives in order to fulfill the topic requirements. The first objective, you must be able to define and describe the animation and how the animation can be deployed in our multimedia project. Second, you must understand the origin of the animation, cell animation, and the techniques. Third, you must be able to define the capabilities of computer animation and the mathematical technique, which is differ from the cell animation technique. Last point, you must be able to explain in brief about the basic and general principles and factors that involve in creating the computer animation for multimedia project. So, I hope you have a clear picture to what you will learn from today topic. Today discussion will be aligned to the topic objectives. So, shall we start? Animation has been defined as act of making static presentation come alive. It is visual change over time and can add great power to your multimedia project. You can animate your whole project, or you can animate here and there, accenting and adding spice. Visual effects such as wipes, fades, zooms, and dissolves are available in most multimedia authoring packages, and some of these effects can be used for primitive animation. However, animations is more than wipes, fades, and zooms. Animation is an object actually moving across or into or out of the screen, a spinning globe of our Earth. A car driving along a line art highway, animations were the primary source of dynamic action in multimedia presentations. Furthermore, animation is possible of a biological phenomenon known as persistence of vision and a psychological phenomenon called phi. In persistence of vision, an object seen by human eye remains chemically mapped on the eye's retina for a brief time after viewing. Combined with the human mind's need phi to conceptually complete a perceived action, this makes it possible for a series of images that are changed very slightly and very rapidly, one after another, to seemingly blend together into a visual illusion of movement. In addition, a digital television video builds 24, 30, or 60 entire frames or pictures every second, depending upon settings. The speed with which each frame is replaced by the next one makes the image appear to blend smoothly into movement. Movies on film are typically shot at a shutter rate of 24 frames per second, but using projection tricks means the projector's shutter flashes light through each image twice. The flicker rate is increased to 48 times per second, and the human eye thus sees a motion picture. On some film projectors, each frame is shown 3 times before the pull-down claw moves to the next frame, for a total of 72 flickers per second, which helps to eliminate the flicker effect. The more interruptions per second, the more continuous the beam of light appears. Quickly changing the viewed image is the principle of an animatic, a flipbook, or a zoetrope. To make an object travel across the screen while it changes its shape, just change the shape and also move, or translate, it a few pixels for each frame. Then, when you play the frames back at a faster speed, the changes blend together and you have motion and animation. It's the same magic as when the hand is quicker than the eye, and you don't see the pea moving in the blur of the sidewalk swindler shells. Next, we will talk on computer-generated animation. Using appropriate software and techniques, you can animate visual images in many ways. The simplest animations occur in 2D space. More complicated animations occur in an intermediate, means 2.5D space, where shadowing, highlights, and forced perspective provide an illusion of depth. And the most realistic animations occur in 3D space. In 2D space, the visual changes that bring an image alive occur on the flat Cartesian X and Y axes of the screen. There are several examples of 2D animation such as a blinking word, a color cycling logo, where the colors of an image are rapidly altered according to a formula, a cell animation, or a button or tab that changes state on mouse rollover to let a user know it is active. These are simple and static, not changing their position on the screen. Moreover, we have path animation in 2D space increases the complexity of an animation and provides motion. Changing the location of an image along a predetermined path or position during a specified amount of time or speed. Authoring and presentation software such as Adobe Animate or PowerPoint provide user-friendly tools to compute position changes and redraw an image in a new location, allowing you to generate a bouncing ball or slide a corporate mascot onto the screen. Combining changes in an image with changes in its position allows you to walk your corporate mascot onto the stage. Changing its size from small to large as it walks on stage will give you a 3D perception of distance. Okay, now we want to talk on the 2.5D space. In 2.5D animation, an illusion of depth, the Z-axis is added to an image through shadowing and highlighting. But, the image itself still rests on the flat X and Y axes in 2 dimensions. Embossing, shadowing, beveling, and highlighting provide a sense of depth by raising an image or cutting it into a background. Next, is 3-dimension space. In 3D animation, software creates a virtual realm in 3 dimensions, and changes motion are calculated along all 3 axes, which are X, Y, and Z axes, allowing an image or object that itself is created with front, back, sides, top, and bottom to move toward or away from the viewer, or in this virtual space of light sources and points of view, allowing the viewer to wander around and get a look at all the object's parts from all angles. After we know about the animation space, now we will take a look on the animation techniques. As stated in the slide, there are 3 points that we should know about the animation technique. The first point is we must understand the animation process. Second, we must familiar with the cell animation technique. The last point is we must have a clear picture about the computer animation technique. So, when you start to create an animation, you should organize its execution into series of logical steps. First, gather up in your mind all the activities you wish to provide in the animation. If it is complicated, you should create a written script with list of activities and required objects and then create a storyboard to visualize the animation. Choose the animation tool best suited for the job, and build and tweak your sequences. This may include creating objects, planning their movements, texturing their surfaces, adding lights, experimenting with lighting effects, and positioning the camera or point of view. Allow plenty of time for this phase when you are experimenting and testing. Finally, post-process your animation, doing any special renderings and adding sound effects. Here, in the slide we got two animation techniques, which are cell animation and computer animation. I hope you be able to focus to these two animation techniques. It is important. Cell animation artwork begins with keyframes, which means the first and last frame of an action. For example, when an animated figure of a human crosses a screen, the person balances the weight of his entire body on one foot and then the other in a series of falls and recoveries, with the opposite foot and leg catching up to support the body. Thus, the first keyframe to portray a single step might be the person pitching his body weight forward off the left foot and leg, while his center of gravity shifts forwards. The feet are close together, and his appears to be falling. The last keyframe might be the right foot and leg catching the body's fall, with the center of gravity now centered between the outstretched stride and the left and right feet positioned far apart. The series of frames in between the keyframes are drawn in a process called tweening. Tweening is an activity that requires calculating the number for frames between keyframes and the path the action takes, and then actually sketching with pencil the series of progressively different outlines. As tweening progresses, the action sequence is checked by flipping through the frames. The penciled frames are assembled and then actually filmed as a pencil test to check smoothness, continuity, and timing. When the pencil frames are satisfactory, they are permanently inked, photocopied onto cell. People were often preferred for this painstaking inking and painting work as they were deemed patient, neat, and had great eyes for detail. In the hands of a master, cell paint applied to the back of acetate can be simply flat and perfectly even, or it can produce beautiful and subtle effects, with feathered edges or smudges. The cell for each frame of our example of a walking person, which may consist of a text title, a background, foreground, characters with perhaps separate cells for left arm, a right arm, legs, shoes, a body, and facial features are carefully registered and stacked. It is this composite that become the final photographed single frame in an animated movie. To replicate natural motion, traditional cell animators often utilized motion capture by photographing a person walking, a horse trotting, or a cat jumping to help visualize timings and movements. Today, animators use reflective sensors applied to a person, animal, or other object whose motion is to be captured. Cameras and computers convert the precise locations of the sensors into X, Y, and Z coordinates and the data is rendered into 3D surface moving over time. Next, is about computer animation. Computer animation programs typically employ the same logic and procedural concepts as cell animation and use the vocabulary of classic cell animation terms such as layer, keyframe, and tweening. The primary difference among animation software programs is in how much must be drawn by the animator and how much is automatically generated by the software. In path-based 2D and 2.5D animation, an animator simply creates an object or imports an object as clip art and describes a path for the object to follow. The computer software then takes over, actually creating the animation on the fly as the program is being viewed. In cell-based 2D animation, each frame of an animation is provided by the animator, and the frames are stitched, which usually with some tweening help available from the software into single file of images to be played in sequence. While, for 3D animation, most of your effort may be spent in creating the models of individual objects and designing the characteristics of their shapes and surfaces. It is the software that then computes the movement of the objects within the 3D space and renders each frame. In the end, stitching them together in a digital output file or container such as an AVI or QuickTime movie. On the computer, paint is most often filled or drawn with tools using features such as gradients and anti-aliasing. The word inks, in computer animation terminology, usually means special methods for computing color values, providing edge detection, and layering so that images can be blend or otherwise mix their colors to produce special transparencies, inversions, and effects. You can usually set your own frame rates on the computer. 2D cell-based animated GIFs, for example, allow you to specify how long each frame is to be displayed and how many times the animation should loop before stopping. 3D animations that are output as digital video files can be set to run at 15, 24, or 30 frames per second. However, the rate at which changes are computed and screens are actually refreshed will depend on the speed and power of your user's display platform and hardware. Especially for animations such as path animations that are being generated by the computer on the fly. Although your animations will probably never push the limits of a monitor's scan rate, where the monitor scan rate limits are about 60 to 70 frames per second. Animation does put raw computing horsepower to task. If you cannot compute all your changes and display them as a new frame on your monitor within, say, 1/15 of a second, then the animation may appear jerky and slow. Luckily, when the files include audio, the software maintains the continuity of the audio at all cost. Preferring to drop visual frames or hold a single frame for several seconds while the audio plays. 3D animations are typically delivered as pre-rendered digital video clips. Software such as Animate or PowerPoint, however, renders animations as they are being viewed, so the animation can be programmed to be interactive. Touch or click on the jumping cat and it turns towards you. Okay students. Now we want to talk about kinematics. Kinematics is the study of the movement and motion of structures that have joints, such as a walking man. Animating a walking step is tricky. You need to calculate the position, rotation, velocity, and acceleration of all the joints and articulated parts involved such as knees bend, hips flex, shoulders swing, and the head bobs. Other than kinematics, we also have inverse kinematics. Inverse kinematics is the process by which you link objects such as hands to arms and define their relationships and limits. For example, elbows cannot bend backward. Once those relationships and parameters have been set, you can then drag these parts around and let the computer calculate the result. Inverse kinematics normally available in high-end 3D programs such as Lightwave and Maya software. Next, we also have morphing tool. Morphing is a popular feature in which one image transforms into another, but please do not overuse the feature. Morphing tools and other modeling tools that offer this feature can transition not only between still images but often between moving images as well. Please refer to the YouTube link that I've shared in this video for your understanding regarding kinematics, inverse kinematics, and morphing process in animation production. Alright students. I think we should stop for a while. Please come back after 5 minutes. Okay students. Do you feel better now? Shall we continue? Let's we continue. Now, let's we discuss on the animation file formats. Some file formats are designed specifically to contain animations, so they can be ported among applications and platforms with the proper translators. Those formats include Director, which the file format is .dir and .dcr, Animator Pro, where the file format is .fli and .flc, 3D Studio Max, where the file format is .max, and other file format as you can read in the slide. In some cases, especially with 3D animations, the individual rendered frames of an animation are put together into one of the standard digital video file containers, such as Windows Audio Video Interleaved format, which is .avi, QuickTime, .qt and .mov, or Motion Picture Experts Group Video, .mpeg and .mpg. These can be played using the media players shipped with computer operating systems. Moreover, as additional information, web browser, which is support for HTML5, can deliver an animation which built within an SVG file format. The SVG is stand for Scalable Vector Graphics, where the graphic elements can be programmed to change over time. After we know almost every basic information regarding animation, now is the time for us to learn how to make the successful animation. The animation catches the eye and makes things noticeable. But, like sound, animation quickly becomes trite if it is improperly applied. Unless your project backbone PF movie-like, animated imagery, use animation carefully and sparingly like spice to achieve the greatest impact. Your screens may otherwise become busy and noisy. Multimedia authoring systems typically provide tools to simplify creating animations within that authoring system. And they often have a mechanism for playing the special animation files created by dedicated animation software. The most widely used tool for creating multimedia animations for Macintosh and Windows environments is Adobe Animate. Moreover, to create the animation is require the high-performance computer hardware which can support the production process. Other than that, if you plan to put your animation on the website, please make sure you use the correct file compression and supported by the web browser. If not, the animation cannot be played by the web browser. As additional information, most of the web browser has disabled the Flash plugin feature by default. So, you need to enable the feature in order to play your animation on the website. Furthermore, to make your animations appear natural requires a basic understanding of the principles of physics. You should compose your animations using these principles, tempering them always with common sense physics to give them the ring of truth. State in the slide some of the authoring tools offline and online version for you to create your animation project. Finally, we arrive at the summary slide. As a summary for today's topic, animation is a visual change over time and adds great power to multimedia. By using animation, the object become alive and attract users to focus on the presentation. There are two techniques to create animation, which are cell animation and computer animation. Cell animation uses a series of progressively different graphic on each frame of movie film, while computer animation has eased the process of creating animation. Default features commonly include in the animation software are kinematics, inverse kinematics, and morphing. Finally, select the correct compression format for your animation. There are many animation file format with different compression algorithm. If you plan to put your animation on the website, please make sure the file format is supported by the web browser. Okay students. Do have any question? I encourage you to visit the link I've shared to clear up your doubt regarding the topic. If you have any question, do not hesitate to ask. It is my pleasure to answer your question. Until we meet again. Thank you for your concentration. Bye.